guys, Rivalboss here, and no, I'm not dead. My wife just has a new job, and I'm trying to get my life kind of just organized where I can still film YouTube videos, I can work, I can support my wife, help her get, going on her new job and everything. So I was going to bring you guys another Arcade 1-Up image today, in fact, and I downloaded the thing, I put it on, I burned it to an SD card, I tried to boot it up just to kind of see how it was going and stuff, and the thing black screened with just some noise. So I need to troubleshoot it or download another image. I do want to bring you guys an Arcade 1 image, so I'm going to do that very soon. I'm just kind of like looking what's the best thing to kind of show you guys something different. So we'll see. But for now, what I decided to do is I have a ton of these handhelds, and I also have like a Game Boy and an Atari Lynx and stuff like that. But these are like more modern systems. I think the oldest thing here I have is a Game Boy SP, and I just wanted to kind of show you guys these modded systems that you can play homebrew and backups and your normal games on. And I kind of will show you what I've done with each one of my systems. I have quite a PSP collection, and I just kind of want to share some of my knowledge that I've gone through with having these units and stuff like that. So, without ado, let's start. So, let's start it off with the PSP. This is your simple, everyday PSP 1000. And I have two of them. One is the normal standard black, and one is this Metal Gear collection one, which is pretty neat. Now you can always tell a 1000 model by they'll be a little bit fatter. They'll have the little bottom handlebars. They have a bigger battery, but they last about the same amount of time. This one is running custom firmware, as you can see. And what that lets you do is basically you hack this thing via the computer through its USB-C, I think it is, connection, and a memory card. And that's how you go and hack these things. They're ultra easy to hack. After you hack them, I have a video up. I'll probably put it at the end of the link. You can put emulators on this. You can do backups. It's amazing. I'll show you in a minute, I have one of these that is supporting a card of 256 gigs. It does take a while to load all the PSP games, but it does work flawlessly in game. So anyway, so the big thing though, you want to know about the 1000 models they are a little bit bigger, they're a little bit more sturdy, but their screens aren't quite as good, and there's a little bit of ghosting on them. So if you want a really good system, I don't know, personally I would not get a 1000 model. They're okay. And you'll also notice, by the way, I have a lot of these plastic cases. These come from AliExpress from China. They're like $1 or $2. And I just find that these really, and you can buy them on Amazon and stuff too, but I find these really just keep the systems much safer and nicer in the long run. So the next thing you got is the 2000 model. And now this is the one I showed in the video I'll link in the bottom or at the end. It's a 2000 model. They got away with the back, so it doesn't have the grips like the 1000 model, but it still has the big fatter backing circle compared to the 3000 model, which has the slim one. So that's how you can instantly tell if it's a 1000, 2000, or 3000. The 2000, the other nice thing about the 2000 is it doesn't have any scan lines in its screen. So if you like the non-scan line look, and they're very minor scan lines. I actually like the 3000 model better myself, but you want to go for a 2000 model. And they have a God of War one, they have a Star Wars one, and then they have a bunch of colors. This is a kind of a rarer color and stuff. And the other thing you want to make sure is, if you find one with a cracked screen, it's not a deal breaker. Screens are really easy to replace. Most of them by this age, a lot of the old, ones that have the original screen, they'll have yellowing on the corners. You'll just have to replace the screen to fix that. But the screens cost $10 to $15, and honestly, most people can probably take this thing apart and replace the screen. It should not be a deal breaker. So next up I have the, these are the, this is the 3000 model. And like I said, they came in a number of colors. We've got a green Metal Gear Solid one. This was a Metal Gear one. We have a blue one here. Let me dust this off. Jeez. And this is it's got a little bit of a custom screen here. And now the 3000 models, they use the same battery as the 2000 models. And I'll show you here. But you got your Star Wars. I'm gonna change that one because that one's probably copyrighted. We'll put Andrea. So, but yeah, this the 3000 models, and as you can see, this one I did not replace the screen, and as you can see, there's a little bit of yellowing, and I'll show you one that doesn't have the yellowing. But yeah, this is one of the few ones I haven't replaced the screen. But yeah, it shouldn't be a deal breaker. It's super easy to replace. There's your 3000. I also have another Metal Gear like camouflage one. This one is super cool. I really like this one a lot. And then the last 3000 I have is really different. So this one came out, I believe, only in Japan, and it's very different. So right away you can tell it's the Monster Hunter one, and you'll see it has two bumps just like the old 1000 model. Now the other neat thing about this one is I believe I haven't 100% tested it, but I believe you can put a 1000 or 2000 battery in this thing. Right now I've got a 2000 battery on it just because I really like the gold finishes too. So here we have the PSP 3000 Monster Edition, Monster Hunter Edition. And I just wanted to kind of show it to you up close. Has a nice little tray and everything. And this is kind of how long it takes to boot up running that 256 gig drive. You have to apologize for the screen. It runs this custom background that comes with the thing. And as you can tell, also, by the way, I don't know if you can see that. It's dirty, unfortunately. Let me see if I can get it to focus. It's not going to. It's like, yeah, there. It's divoted in. The thumbstick is. So anyway, but yeah, I just was going to show you, like, 256 gigs of games. It will put a ton of games on here. So you don't have to, like, you know, constantly be changing your tray. Your game UMD, and you can just go digital with custom firmware and just put a ton of games on here. That's what I would do. You're like, seriously, like, this thing is awesome. So next we have the PSP Go's. Now the PSP Go's are just as easy to hack as the 3000 and 1000 2000 models. You just are going to do it through their little, you're going to have the custom charge port that goes to the USB. And that's how you're going to hack them. The only bad thing about these little guys are they do use a little bit different memory. And the memory sticks, well, all of the PSPs use their own little Pro Dual ones. These use M2 cards. And they're a little bit harder to find, and they're a little bit more expensive. They're not Vita memory expensive, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They have a nice screen. My Doris Burst, this is like one of my favorite games. I'm going to turn the volume down here. Doris Burst. This is a really nice little unit to like take with you on the go. They're really easy to hack. The only thing you got to be careful with is when you recharge the battery or change the battery, you got to open this thing up, unlike the other ones, which you just have a little panel. And if it has a damaged screen, I would avoid it. They're really hard to change the screen, and I'll show you. I have one, this white one. Well, I'm not going to show you, but this white one has a damaged screen. They also came in white. The white one has kind of a slight damage. It's not so much that it's like a deal breaker, but just like the little corner is nicked, and it's been so much that I don't want to replace it. Like I looked online, so I would avoid it. But in general, the PSPs are really easy to hack. They can run a ton of ROMs, or I'm not ROMs, but yeah, they can run ROMs too. They can run ROMs. They can run emulators. You can play Super Nintendo on them. You can play pretty much everything a lot of other systems have a hard time, other than the Vita, have a hard time emulating PSPs. So why not get a cheap PSP that is naturally how the game was supposed to be made, and they look great. Some of my favorites are the Metal Gear one, the 3000 model, the Monster Hunter one, and also I really find that the 2000 models, like, I don't have it, but the God of War one is pretty neat too. And then if you like the PSP Go's, they're really neat. I kind of like and we'll talk about this later, the Sony Ericsson better for what the PSP Go does. But as far as if you wanted to play PSP games on the go, like PSP games on the go, you want the PSP Go. So next up we have the kind of like Nintendo family. And I do have a normal Game Boy, but I didn't really want to show that because you couldn't really play, like other things on it. This one has a nice case on it too. So this is my AGS 101, and I'm going to show you real quick. We're going to turn it on here, and it just has such a much nicer screen to it. This one has, so you can't really necessarily hack this thing, but what you can do, and I have a video up on it, is get this little, basically a EverDrive cart almost, and then you can put a little micro SD card in there, and this thing will run your normal Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo. So yeah, it runs a bunch of other emulators, and this screen just looks so much nicer. So hands down, if you're going to go this way, I would just recommend getting yourself an AG 101. This thing is amazing looking. It does Game Boy Advance games. They look much better than pretty much anything else up here on this AG 101 screen. So whenever I want to play Game Boy Advance games, I pull out my Game Boy SP. The only thing bad about this thing is it does not have a headphone jack. So you won't be able to like have audio if you're in a place that you have to, like where you'd have a headphone jack. The original Game Boy Advance do have headphone jacks, but they all have the backlit screen. So unless you're going to spend some money and get it modified to have the AG101 screens, the Game Boy SP is the way to go, honestly. So, and then the next thing they kind of released was they released the normal Nintendo DS. I don't have one of those. I don't really see a point in it. But then they have a Game Boy, a DS Lite. And the DS Lite's really nice. It's a much smaller than most of these other units for playing DS games. And you can hack this thing via a cart, much like you could with the Game Boy SP. And you can run other emulators on this thing. It's just much harder to do than some of the later stuff I'm going to show you. But it's a good unit. It also, the Game Boy Lights will play normal Game Boy games because they have a Game Boy cart. They did away with that after this unit. So if you want to play normal Game Boy Advance games and normal Game Boy games... Oh, no. This does not play Game Boy games. It will play Game Boy Advance games. I almost caught myself. Normal Game Boy games can be played on the SP. You cannot play normal Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on the Lite. But you can play Game Boy Advance games and DS games. So this is kind of a neat little unit to have. They're super cheap too. But if I'm going to get that, I'm going to say you should almost get this is a Nintendo DSi XL. And I got this thing at a Goodwill for 20 bucks. This thing will play your normal DS games. And the nice thing about it is it has a very easily accessible SD card slot where you can run a micro SD card in there. These things are hacked via the memory card slot, and they're really easy. I'm going to show you this. This is running custom firmware. But this thing will play, your Super Nintendo, your Nintendo with emulators, Mega Drive, and then it will also play a ton of DS games. And I have on here Retro Game Challenge, the Retro Game Challenge. And you can also play Game Boy games on here, as you can see, with this emulator, setup / custom firmware. And you just press this over arrow, and then I'll just show you real quick. Once it boots up, you literally you can have a ton of DS games. Real cool. So this is a really neat thing to have. This is a really cool unit to have. The next up from that is the original 3DS. Now this one is not hacked, but you can hack this one, just like you can hack this one. You just do it via the memory card again, and you have to update it. You update it online through Nintendo. Then you basically, there's a bunch of different ways to exploit this, but one of the easier ways is to download a game, a specific game, and then inject it in with like a code to run free code. But yeah, this thing is really nice. The one thing you need to understand about the normal 3DS's XLs is that these ones do not have the nice IPS screens that the new one does down here. And there's some news that don't run them either. So you will notice that as I turn, the colors will turn almost white on there. Straight on it looks fine, but it turns white as you go away. So that's kind of a bummer, but this thing still is a great unit to have. And if you hack it, they're much cheaper than the new 3DSs. Yeah, I know that's confusing, but this one's called the new 3DS XL. And as you can see, I have a nice case on that. Now, my last one I have here, I've showed you a video of this. This was actually my last video. Was this really nice dual IPS Hyrule Edition, and this thing is very easy to hack as well. The only thing about the new 3DSs you need to know is that the memory card is actually inside of the unit. So you basically have to pop these two screws every time and then move it down to, let me turn that down so I don't get copyrighted. And then you can access the memory card to hack this thing. And here's my new 3DS XL running custom firmware. And as you can see, you can put a ton of games on there. You can run homebrew, back up all your games to the system. And that way you don't even have to change carts and stuff. So this is another really pretty unit. I highly recommend a new 3DS like this one that I have here. It's really neat. You can put a ton of stuff on it, emulators, backups. I don't condone. I own many of these games, by the way. There are a few games that I don't own as far as them just not even being in my region. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff you can do with these new 3DSs. They're really neat. Try to find a dual IPS if you can. These Hyrule editions are a real high likelihood to get them. But yeah, that's the 3DSs. The 3DSs and the DSs and the Game Boy Advances. These are really fun for playing Nintendo games. They can play other things with emulators and stuff, but not really any PSP games. So what I would recommend is to get a PSP, a DS, and a Vita. And I'll go over the Vita next. So if you're looking for something a little bit more than, say, the PSPs or even the 3DSs and stuff like that, then you can look into getting a Vita. They're a little bit more expensive than even the 3DS XLs, but they do a lot of stuff. Like, you can play pretty much every emulator, minus maybe an N64. The N64 is actually best on this little Sony Ericsson here. But basically, they're really cool. They're pretty easy to hack. You just have to make sure that you have the right firmware and the right hack to do the hacking. Most of it is, all of it is done through the basically the micro SD slots or micro USB, and you basically are just going to run software that hacks the kernel of the PS Vita, and then you can basically install custom firmware, in which time you can install like emulators, free shops, whatever. So there's a couple different models. I have a 1000 model, a 2000 model, and we got the little Sony Ericsson over here. But this is the 1000 model. Now this one came out first. The thing about this one shows fingerprints like no other. So I will say that if you want one that doesn't show fingerprints, I would kind of go towards the 2000 model. So this has an OLED screen. So the screen is really nice on these ones. I will say that the feel of the 2000 is what I prefer. A lot of people do like the 1000 models though. They have a little less battery life than the 2000s, but the screen is an OLED, so it's beautiful. And as you can see here, this thing is hacked, much like the 2000 and stuff. This one does not have a memory card hack as well, so I am just running on the SD. And as you can see, I've put a couple games on there. And you can still use the card slot to play your normal games on this one. So that's kind of what I've done with the 1000. Now the 2000, I'll show you. The 2000, I basically, since this is kind of my go-to unit to play on, and here I'll show you. As you can see, I've got some anime games on here too. But yeah, there's a lot of games in here. And why that is instead of having the game slot that has a game in there, there's a modification that you can do where there's a game card that you can put an SD card in and then turn it into a memory storage. So this Vita is running a 256 gig hard drive basically in it. So you can have a ton of games. I really, really like this unit though. The 2000 is awesome. It's a little bit slimmer, even with this plastic case on it, than the 1000. It feels better in my hands personally. It's just a better unit in my opinion. The 1000 does really have a nice screen, but my go-to is still the 2000 model of the Sony Vita. And the Vita 1000 comes in a couple different colors, red and stuff. The blue PSP 2000 is beautiful. I've been trying to find a good deal on that. But yeah, these are really easy to hack too. They're a little bit harder than, obviously, PSPs, I would say, are probably one of the easiest, followed by the DSi and then the 3DS. So I would put the Vita harder than all of those personally, but they're still pretty easy. Most of my video game consoles, and I'm going to probably do consoles too here, I either make them so I can run backups or homebrew on pretty much every system I have. Homebrew, emulators, the Vita can do it almost all. The only thing it has a little trouble with is N64, and that's why I got this little bad boy, and this is the Sony Ericsson, and I've shown you this on my channel before, and this thing just runs really well. As you can see here, I have a bunch of emulators. Pretty amazing. It's actually got the physical L and R button on the top in nice chrome. And then it has all of your buttons, and this is like one of the best D-pads and buttons that I have found on like a small little portable phone. This is great for emulation. You can put everything up to PSP and DS on here. Some games won't work, but there are a whole bunch that do. PlayStation 1, Genesis, Mega Drive, Neo Geo, they all run on this thing. This thing is awesome. And I use this mostly, and it's got the nice little flip just like the PSP Go. It's actually, I would say, slightly smaller than a PSP Go. Mine is fatter just because I have an extended battery on this thing. So if I was stuck on a desert island, I want my 3DS, new 3DS. I want my PSP 3000, and I want my little Sony Ericsson. Those are my favorite. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share with you my little collection of kind of modern day handhelds, and these are great to collect, and they're really fun. And I just wanted to kind of share with you. I'm gonna make a video also on some of my consoles and like how how easy they are to attain, some of the things out to look for. With the 1000 Vitas, by the way, you just want to make sure that it has a nice screen and all the buttons work. Same thing with 2000. The Sony Ericsson, you want to make sure it has a good battery in it. And if you don't have a good battery, you want to buy a brand new battery, just because cheap Chinese knockoffs, they don't last very long and they can cause damage to the unit. Also, the little silver pins down here, these will wear, so you just want to be really careful with those. But anyway, so yeah, that's my collection. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's going to be some more kind of actual, arcade one-up stuff coming, and I've got a whole bunch of like newer items that are coming to me over the next month. But I just have really been struggling to try to find time. But if you guys like this video, please come back to the channel and like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Once I get to 2000, and we're getting super close, I will release my new image. I have still had time to work on that. That's actually why I've had less time to make videos. So I'm excited to show you guys that. So thanks guys for joining me today, and I really hope you liked the video. And knock that like and subscribe button. And until next time, this is the Rivalboss signing off.